Reynard Architectural Designs, and we're not recording. Now we are.
Come on in.
Hi, this is Jack Baldwin with Reynard Architectural Designs, and you're listening to By Design, our podcast about professional creativity. And today I am lucky because I get to be joined by both of my business partners and my very good friends, James Knight. How are you today, James?
I'm good, Jack. How you doing?
I'm wonderful. So you had some travels throughout December and January, and now you're back at home?
No, not yet. I'll be back home this weekend, actually.
Great. Where are you right now?
I am on the Sunshine Coast, just north of Brisbane in Australia.
Nice. Glad to have you joining us this is actually our second By Design podcast. So, and then for the first time, we're having Kalyn on the podcast. So, Kalyn, how are you?
Yeah, doing good. Glad to be here. And I was super bummed that I had to miss the first one. Actually, I was looking forward to that, but
Yeah, it
yeah,
was a lot of fun.
yeah, that was when lightning blew up a tree in my backyard, so I
I
was
do
having
remember
some
that.
electrical problems.
That's a good excuse.
Yeah, you did finally have a good excuse for not making it. So we let it
Right.
slide. And she did have pictures to prove it. So I let it go.
Yes.
So my hope is that all three of us will get to banter together in the future as often as possible. But again, I meant it what I said when we started. I feel really lucky to get to record an actual podcast. I think it's the first time the three of us have gotten to do this together, and it's really exciting. You guys are both my two business partners. We started Reynard Architectural Designs together. And here we are, and it's been a really fantastic 2021 that we just finished up. I thought we had an awesome year. We learned a lot. We grew, and we didn't hate each other at the end of 2021. So I felt like it was a really good partnership. Like, we're starting 2022 with some really good stuff happening and some exciting things going on. So very grateful to have you guys in my life, and grateful to have you guys to partner with at Reynard.
Yeah,
So,
same.
Yeah. Our topic is James Knight today. We're actually going to just be talking about James. So
The hot seat.
You're in the hot seat, James. Now we're going to get to hear your story, and anybody listening, I guess they can tell from your accent that you are not just living in Australia, but from there and grew up there. So we just wanted to kind of go through a couple questions and just let the conversation go where it will.
Yeah, so in true superhero fashion, James, what is your origin story?
Nice.
Yeah, good question.
How did you gain your superpowers?
I wouldn't really call them superpowers. You kind of just go with the flow, I think. You make it up as you go along, maybe. Well, geez, I mean, we could go all the way back to when I first wanted to be an architect.
That's a good start.
Yeah. So probably when I remember being in probably 5th grade when I decided I enjoyed drawing so much. I had a teacher that was really inspiring for me and convinced me that's what I would want to do. And then from that point on, I did a lot of drawing classes. I did anything I could go towards building things or figuring out how it worked. That's where I was.
So what were some of your favorite things to draw when you were at that age? Were you doing only buildings or characters, or what were you drawing?
Character design, actually, back then. I mean, I remember the first thing I drew that specific teacher actually commented on was we were doing Christmas stories, and I drew just like a tin soldier from one of the Christmas stories that we had.
Oh, that's cool.
I don't know, but it must have just been very precise, you know. So with the rules.
I used to love drawing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles when I was that age.
Yeah. And look where we are now.
That's funny. So you drew some characters, and the teacher noticed, and you started getting inspired, huh?
It's funny how teachers can have that impact.
Sure.
So early on, yeah. And then
I hear so many times that it's teachers that make such that those impacts. It's amazing.
Yeah, for sure. It's like my family is quite artistic though, and my uncle was a senior draftsman, so he did a lot of design work as well. My uncle was a jewelry designer, and so there's still design in our family. And my aunt's an interior designer, so it's not like it's unique to myself, but
Yeah.
there's definitely a moment that I remember for sure.
And so where did that take you? So you're on a path to become an architect at a young age.
Yep. Then lead me into high school, where I just did horribly and never got the marks to get into architecture school. So just came close to flunking out of high school, but it got to a point where I was like, no, you need to knuckle down and do it. So I spent the years after high school doing makeup courses until I got into architecture school up at a place called Newcastle, which is a city north of where I grew up, so not Sydney. And just studied my undergraduate there, which was great, and met some really nice people. Really, that was a hands-on experience university. We did a lot of hand drawing. We weren't allowed to use computers
Oh,
to
nice.
submit any of our work from, so that was fun. There was a lot of models, a lot of site visits, so it was good fun. You go out and camp on site and stuff like that. So that was something unique. And then from there it was, I got a job in an office, so I worked my whole time. At that point I was much more serious about my education and getting it done. So yeah, I worked through in different architectural offices and just met some really good employers and some good people to work with, and just really lucky, really. And then that led me into the University of Sydney, where I did my master's. And
so what year was that when you started your master's?
when I started my master's would have been 2014.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I started late. I didn't get into university until I was 21. So I traveled after high school, and as a lot of people do, until I was 21. And then I started my undergraduate, and then did my 3 years, and then just went straight into my master's. And I was lucky enough to meet a man called Sam Marshall in my undergraduate, who did the big contemporary art museum in Sydney. And he just taught me a bunch of stuff, and I worked for him for free basically for many years, just soaking up everything that he could tell me about architecture. And he was a good mentor at the time, and he helped me get to Sydney University, and kind of like showed me that there was no real limits to what we could do. So worked with him, and then we did my master's, and then I wanted to get back and travel a little bit and see the world, and then there I was in America all of a sudden. So
yeah, it's 2019. I think it's January, and a tall blonde guy walks into the office with my dad and introduces me to him, and I'm like, well, he came from Australia to work here. And I couldn't figure it out. So I remember that's the day I remember meeting you, was 2019. Was that right?
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So what brought you to Atlanta?
Yeah. So initially it was travel, and then I had some family. My aunt, who's the interior designer, she's in Atlanta, and she's based in Georgia and North Carolina, so she moves all over the place. And I connected up with her, and I was like, hey, listen, I want to do something different for a moment. And so yeah, it just gave me a really good opportunity, I guess, to get out of the country and see something different and meet different people. So
Sure.
coming over was it had its good points, it had its rough points, but
yeah, we went through some of those rough points together too.
yes, some of them we did, yeah. And then of course COVID as well, a different rough point.
Yeah.
But,
Right.
Yeah.
Because you ended up going back to Australia right when everything happened. Is that the timeline for COVID?
The COVID, I waited maybe 6 months before I came back.
Okay,
which was
because I
good
knew
timing
right.
back for me, because Australia, being as strict as it is, was harder and harder to get into.
Right.
I actually flew out of America on Thanksgiving, and it was just the cheapest flight, because flights, the price of flights went up to like $10,000 a ticket and stuff. And I was just like, that's not happening.
Yeah.
So, people were scared. So, no, I got a decent flight and I flew out, and then I had to spend 2 weeks in quarantine and here in Australia. And then after that, we didn't really have any COVID until about now. really. We were
Huh.
having maybe like 10 cases a day at the time. So once you were out of quarantine, you were just back to normal.
Well, we're
That
looking
was
forward to having you visit again and we're looking forward to visiting you when we
Right,
can,
right.
when things are a little bit more normal. But I did want to just, revisit that moment and between, when you came to Atlanta, and that's when, because that's when the three of us connected that year. I think Kalyn, we started working together in 2019, like in August, I think.
Yeah, I
And
think sometime in the summer.
yeah. Yeah, and then I just remember that year was a rough one for me as well, ups and downs. But that was like a big highlight. Looking back on that year was connecting with the two of you. I remember Kalyn giving me that book, which we'll get into my story and Kalyn's story later. But it all kind of rolled into what became Reynard Architectural Designs. So James coming to Atlanta and us working together led to for us seeing a dream come true with our company getting started. So so that I think it's a great origin story. It kind of brings us up to today where we're at. So James, what I wanted to ask you as far as being an architect, what do you find really inspiring? I know that's a really, really big question. But it's a creative process, and sometimes it's a movie you watch, sometimes it's a lecture you're given. Maybe I'll leave it way, way wide open, and you just tell me things that have inspired you in your work, and or maybe some sources of inspiration for you.
Sure. It is a pretty big question. I would probably say there's a few things. It can't just be one thing, right?
Yeah.
So obviously we spend a lot of time, you looking through pictures, you're reading about different projects and stuff like that. So obviously there's a deal of that happens where you see something really interesting, you're like, oh, I really want to try that. Maybe I'll get the opportunity one day to try that. And lucky for us, we get some great clients. And when it comes to a residential sort of space, we do get to try a lot of those options out, or at least I get to pitch them to clients. Whether or not they go for it is something completely different. And then I've done all my other commercial sort of work, so I get to try out other ideas that might not be residential sort of sided on those sort of projects. So there's that sort of thing, and then there's the people you work with and the mentors that you have as well. And I have a mentor here in Australia who teaches me just all this sort of stuff that I wouldn't even think about every time I talk to him, every time I sit down with him. So he's quite inspiring for me. It's just like those sort of people make you look at things differently.
Yeah.
Right.
And even when the three of us sit together and we just kind of joke about things and we talk through things, it's just kind of like, yeah, I didn't think of it like that. It's quite a good way. And then your mind just kind of goes that way and you start thinking of new ideas or maybe problem solving something that's come up in conversation. And then the biggest one for us is clients. So I talk to a lot of people, friends from university or different architects that we've worked with or worked for in the past, and they all have a niche where they kind of are. Like some people do banks, some people do a certain type of farmhouse sort of housing style, or craftsman, or something like that, or some people just do commercial work. I have a good friend here that just does, warehouses, and he makes money out of that. It's not very inspiring for him, but that's what he likes doing.
Right.
But we touch on so many different things, and that comes down to the clients.
Right.
So I really enjoy connecting with the clients. I really like responding to them, and I find that takes down a lot of barriers between whether it's location based because I'm in Australia and they're over there, or sometimes they have a lot of questions when it comes into design. People aren't really sure what to expect. There's obviously quite a different sort of approach in Australia than there is in the US, so you got to coordinate that sort of thing as well. So that sort of stuff really inspires me. It's fun working through those problems and trying to organize it.
Right.
Yeah, I think back on a lot of the projects that we went out on together when we were both here in Atlanta, and I found those moments inspiring too. I feel like there's something that kind of clicked when we were out together, in Locust Grove, meeting with, remember that couple that we did the Asian style home for them, and down by the lake, and that was just kind of, I remember that even be kind of a turning moment in my mind of that was inspiring. Just to hear people's dreams being talked about on the land that they were looking at building on. And I just saw how well you connected with them, James, and just how you make that conversation so easy. Because I think when you're starting the creative process, the big challenge is getting people comfortable to really get their ideas going, and then also you capturing them and listening to them. And you've always had such a good demeanor with clients. Like I would almost think of it like a bedside manner, able to get people to just feel comfortable and feel like they're being listened to, So
But there's a lot of different types of
mhm.
clients out there, right? Some have everything figured out,
Right.
and some need a little bit of hand holding, or bedside manner, where you have to almost tease the answers out of them, but like you're working with them to figure out what they need, and they just have an overall vision. They haven't thought of the details yet. So there's
But
everything.
you're good at assessing and understanding people's personalities and what their preparedness level is, and are they going to be really high maintenance, or are they going to be really give us a lot of runway. There's there's no real good or bad answers to those questions. There's just that everybody's different and everybody has a different experience coming into it. But I think that's what makes us good at what we do, is when we're able to be adaptive to people. And I've admired that about you, and how you draw that inspiration out of people too. So that makes the job really fun when we see people's homes designed. It's really satisfying.
Right.
Yeah.
James, do you have I know you mentioned a mentor, but do you have like an architect that you kind of like model your style to, or maybe an architectural style that you want to grow into, or are you just kind of finding out what your shtick is, in your design process?
Yeah, interesting question. I guess I'll go with the second option there. I'm still trying to figure it out. Obviously, there's certain people I look up to. That's for certain. I mean, I talked about my mentor here at the moment. I don't know necessarily if I'm trying to design in his style. He's quite contemporary, but he does like commercial work, sort of thing. So it's I really, where I find most joy is probably in residential, not so much in commercial. Although commercial's fun because you can do bigger stuff,
Sure.
but you get the reaction out of a residential that you don't get out of a commercial job.
Right.
But there are certain architects that I would follow. Obviously, being Australian, and if anyone knows about Australian architects, you have Glenn Murcutt, who's quite a good source of inspiration. And one of the pieces I designed for myself was based off, a lot of his architecture and my own style, a little bit more contemporary than what he would design in. His is a little bit more rural and rustic,
Sure.
which is, great. But yeah, no one super specific. I because we do change a lot.
Right.
And then there are bigger firms in Europe and in America that obviously I go there from time to time just to see what's happening with them and things like that. But
Yeah.
no one that I would be like, hey, I really want to just be like, this is the way I'm going. Not at the moment,
Right.
at least.
Right.
We're
Right.
just trying to figure things out, and I think some design styles keep coming back
Sure.
up again for us. But I wouldn't put that down on one person yet. Not quite yet.
Gotcha. Okay, very cool. So you're still very much, just it's kind of like your exploratory phase. You're still, obviously still young in your career, so as well. So, yeah. Okay.
There's still plenty of things to do.
Right. Yeah, we've not seen everything yet, that's for sure. So, so what are your favorite projects that you've worked on?
Well, it's another hard question, isn't it?
Right.
Tiny little treehouse.
Yeah.
We have done a few tree houses recently, which have been really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we did a couple in Atlanta. We did a townhouse in Atlanta that was a little bit higher market, modern farmhouse. That was for Standard Drive.
Right.
That was a really fun project, and we had a great team on board there because the contractor was on board, the survey team was on board. So we would have design meetings where there'd be like 10 people involved from the city the city getting in on the meetings because we had to do a variance. There was so much involved in that project. That was actually quite fun, and we learned a ton of stuff there. And we may be working with that client again in the future, which is super exciting because you get so happy when the client comes back and like, hey, we're doing another project, and so that was actually a lot of fun.
That was memorable.
Yeah, that was a good one. And we went out, like even Jack and I both went out on site to measure that existing house. So, there was a lot to that project.
Oh my gosh. I just remember it was kind of like just had been abandoned, this home. And it was like a treasure trove of weird stuff that got left behind.
It was like this tiny little house that was like separated into 3 different units or something like that. And
yes.
Like,
interesting.
Oh, it was so ugly. It's in Brookhaven, and it was like the ugliest house in the corner. I remember people driving by and be like, "Hey, are y'all the architects to fix this place up?" And we're like, "Yeah."
Sure,
like,
they were
thank
so
you.
happy.
Can we help? Can we pay?
Yeah.
Right.
And
right.
all these super nice houses around it, and then it was just like this corner that had like long grass and. So that was fun. That was a good one. And then we've done a couple others in Brookhaven that have been really fun, and it'd be good to go back and talk to those clients and get photos of their houses. And stuff,
well,
so.
yeah. And it's
and
also
we're working.
I was just
go
going to
ahead.
say it's also, I mean, that's something we've always enjoyed together, is just when a team comes together. That's what's there's style and there's artisticness and flair and the architectural side of it, but there's also sometimes just like it's great to see people all rolling up their sleeves and getting involved and a project that everybody's passionate about. It's really fun.
Yeah, when the team really works well together, that's something different, isn't it? So it wasn't like there wasn't anyone on that team that was like dragging the chain, so to speak. It was just like everyone had fun and was doing good. Yeah,
I do remember that. Well, is there another project you were thinking of too, James?
I think we have a couple of really good ones in the works at the moment. So that'll be interesting to see how they progress.
Well, that's what's fun about what we do is I'm just, as you mentioned that, my mind was just racing thinking about all these people that we've worked with in 2021 and the projects we're wrapping up this year, and every one of them has a different story. And it's like, not to be overly sentimental, it's like, who's my favorite child? But you do feel that attachment to the people and the personal story that's going on for each project. They're also different. And but there's things about each one that makes them so memorable, and it's just that's what makes what we get to do really fun, especially doing residential stuff. But speaking of the process of a project, James, what do you find most rewarding in the design process?
Most rewarding is when
or enjoyable, or
the thing that's most rewarding is when I go off topic and then show the client something that they haven't asked for and they enjoy it.
I like that too.
That is probably the most rewarding thing. So we have like the way that I kind of design things is we almost present 2 plans to people. Not every time. Some people are very specific in what they want, but if there's a question mark there, and I feel like there's a question mark when I'm talking to them, I'm like, all right, well, I see what you're asking for, and you've designed it to a point, which is great. And then there's a gap there where they're like, yeah, but it could be better. And I'm like, well, I can fill that gap. That's great.
I love that. I love that.
Because I can give them, so if they've got a floor plan, I'll give them the floor plan. I'm like, this is what you've asked for, and this is what works and what doesn't. These are pros and cons. And then I've done something that's completely different.
Right. And it's like when your eyes light up when somebody says, like, we had a call with a client just before this, and she said, well, you can do whatever you want. And I was like, well, I want to see where that goes.
Yeah.
That could be interesting, but no, I mean, she sent through a ton of images.
Yeah,
they're
she was
just
very helpful.
Images, right? So they're not.
But she's giving you when she gives you permission to be creative, like anybody giving you permission to, come up with ideas. That's fun. That's like a challenge.
Yeah, exactly. But you can take those images and you can take that, and turn that into. So there are design parameters, but you got to design within them. But like that's the fun part. Like especially if you've not designed in that style before or something like that, you can turn around and be like, oh, this is going to be good, and then you can research that style and be like, oh, look at all these sort of interesting things. And because people ask me like, do you want to do contemporary architecture or do you want to do farmhouse and stuff like that? Sometimes farmhouse, like modern farmhouses, are really fun to design. You know, there's a lot that
Right.
goes into it. And if you do something, you know, you take a few elements from a few different designs that you really like and you make them work together, and it's just like, wow, that's actually really fun. And they see it, and they're like, oh, I didn't think that was possible. You know, that's really nice.
Well, and I think you only get there. You can take those risks when you understand what the client is after.
Right.
Yeah.
If you know what their goals and their dreams and their value is, I mean, that's what's so critical to me. You need to understand what people really. Oh, my watch started talking to me in the middle of. Was that on air?
It was.
Yeah.
Well, I'll have to use the bleep button. No, but we were sitting down with a client the other day, and I remember him saying to me, how do you think of things that we haven't told you? Like, how do you come up with like
Right.
an idea that we haven't, like, what if we don't know that we want a balcony and you suggest it? How do you get to that point? And I said, the more we understand what you really value, like, what is it about your home experience that you really love? Is it like, where do you want to spend your time? Where do you see yourself, you know, spending your time in the future, with family, outdoors, upstairs? Like, so we ask questions and get to know what you really care about. And then there's that gap in between that James is talking about of, you know, meeting a need that wasn't even precisely articulated. And yet you anticipate that with a flair and a surprise. And that's, I see why that's rewarding, because you've understood the client, you've understood what they need and want and hope for, and then incorporated that into something innovative. And that's cool.
Yeah, you're connecting to the client's actual like want and dream, really. I mean, you know, the building is just the result, but the you know, the dream and what people want is a lot of times not necessarily a tangible thing. And so it's that feeling. So yeah, it's super cool. I'm not part of the design process at all, but I like to see it from afar.
Yeah, it doesn't always work out though. I mean, like, sometimes you take a risk and the client's just like, no.
Right.
Like, yeah, I've got those emails. I got one I need to read at the moment, sure, but so it doesn't always work out. But it's worth taking the risk. And you know, I tell clients, look, you may not like everything, and you may like some things. You may like one thing out of the 10 that I give you, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. You may not like any of it, but that's part of the process.
Right.
And you know, no one gets upset about it. No one. My feelings aren't hurt if you tell me, look, why did you give me an upside down house? And I'm like, well, I'm an idiot. But you know, no one gets upset. You're just like, okay, yeah. So now I understand you better, because what I've shown you, I've just crossed out all these things off the list that you don't want, which I didn't know before. So now we're really narrowing down to what you want. So you know, it's just a process, and that's the fun part about it.
Absolutely. And it is fun. And this was fun. This was really fun to get to hear your story, James. And you know, as we were talking, I was thinking about our time together in Atlanta and going to Savannah and running a half marathon and hoping we get to.
A lot.
Yeah, we had a lot of fried chicken together in the Battery.
I do think about that fried chicken a lot.
Well, it's not there any longer, unfortunately. But yeah, James, you're a dear friend, and I'm so proud to call you a partner to both Kalyn and I. You really make what we do awesome. And so this was a lot of fun to get to talk, and looking forward to spending time in person together again soon.
Right.
So next time on our By Design podcast recording, we're going to put Kalyn in the hot seat.
Ooh.
So, Kalyn, I will not be sending you the questions ahead of time. You have to wing it entirely. Fine. No cheating on the test.
As long as you're okay with me rambling and it might not make sense at all, then fine.
Oh, I have an edit button for that.
That's what podcasts are.
Yeah, that's true. That's true, actually.
Anyhow, James, thank you so much for sharing your story today.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
And Kalyn, thanks for making time today to talk with James, and welcome to the podcast. We're so glad that you're finally one of the co-hosts.
Yeah, happy to be here. So it's super fun.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to think of a clever way to sign off, but I guess I'll just say goodbye, and we'll talk again soon.